that immediacy could be used beneficially without toxicity. All right. And affordably. And so I just saw this as this experiment is what brought me into the realm of food as medicine.
So I'm going to ask some stupid questions here. So on here, I can see that, for example, soy extract causes less angiogenesis, which, from
Yes.
what I understand, is the growth of these blood vessels. But does that mean that if I have lots of soy extract or artichoke or parsley or berries, that it's going to cause other parts of my body not to grow blood cells?
So this is the great question. Let me kind of reframe the question as you're asking it. If experiments are able to show that certain foods can prevent blood vessels from growing, will that actually cause a problem with your body's health defenses to keep blood vessels from growing in healthy tissues?
Yeah.
All right. Answer is no. And here's why. As a health defense system, our angiogenesis system is completely designed to yoke in the right number of blood vessels to give just the right amount of blood flow. Not too much, not too little. I call it the Goldilocks zone. You know, Goldilocks, the fairy tale. The bears were home invaders. They broke into the house and they were looking for chairs and porridge and beds, not too hot, not too cold, but just right. All of our health defenses, including the angiogenesis health defense, is hardwired to keep the body just right. So what that means is that eating foods like artichokes or strawberries or soy can actually help your body prevent extra blood vessels from growing towards cancer, for example, and other disease tissues, but it will not override the body's natural ability to get the right amount of blood vessels to the right tissue. So you don't have to worry about starving your healthy tissues. You're just cutting off the bad blood vessels of the tissue. I call it like a landscaper on a golf course that breaks out the lawnmower to mow that the golf course so it's got a perfect level of the lawn. You're not going to actually carve out a bald spot in a country club. You're going to get just the right amount. Similarly, and we're not talking about this graph, there's another graph that can actually show foods that you can eat that can grow blood vessels, healthy blood vessels, where you want them. And it turns out things like fruit peel can actually do that. And barley can grow new blood vessels. And dark chocolate can actually help to support blood vessels as well. And some of these things can also work on both sides of the equation. They can prune away the bad extra blood vessels and they can grow them whenever you need them. So your body is sort of like the gardener extraordinaire. It knows exactly how to actually tend. You give them the right ingredients, they know exactly where to put the grass seed, and they know exactly where to mow the lawn.
Have you ever had cancer in your family?
Yes. Cancer has touched my family like it has for most people. I had two uncles years ago that passed away. One passed away from colon cancer, one passed away from liver cancer. And, I was a doctor at the time. And so I felt so helpless because as a doctor, I could diagnose, I could lay hands on, I could feel the hard liver, I could feel the masses, and I felt at the time helpless. Even though I was doing the research, cancer research, and finding future paths, I felt like we're not there yet, and we can't. I couldn't help him. I felt powerless. Fast forward, we're now at a point where we're beginning to see the light at the end of the tunnel. And when my mother had cancer, so my uncle's sister, my mother, wound up having endometrial cancer. She was 80 years old. One day, had some bleeding, went to the hospital, found a mass. She had a hysterectomy to remove her uterus and ovaries, and they found in there an endometrial cancer. That's a cancer of the lining of the uterus. The surgery and a little bit of radiation was supposed to take care of it. Unfortunately, in her case, those little cancer stem cells, and it was microscopic cancers that were present, raced off in her 80-year-old body, which, weaker immune system when you're 80. And within a few months after successfully recovering from the surgery, she had stage 4 cancer everywhere. All right. And her oncologist told me, Dr. Lee, you're a doctor as well. This is serious and this is pretty much the time of game over. And now times have changed. Science had advanced. progress has advanced. At that time, when my mother was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer, immunotherapy, the latest and greatest, I think, advancement in cancer treatment, had just broken through and become approved. Immunotherapy is not chemotherapy. It doesn't actually poison the cancer. Immunotherapy is a medicine that you give a cancer patient that wakes up your own immune system. Whether you're a young person or an old person, it can wake up your immune system. All right. And my mother had immunotherapy. She was one of the early patients that got immunotherapy, and her own 80-year-old immune system woke up like an army of super soldiers and went after that cancer. Now, we completely adjusted her diet so that her body between treatments would be as strong as possible, shields raised, as we've been talking about. And we gave her a little bit of radiation to help her immune system spot the cancer. Guess what happened? 3 treatments of immunotherapy, 3 weeks apart. So time 0 is the first treatment. 3 weeks later, the next treatment. 3 weeks after that, the next treatment. All right. So we're talking about a total of 9 weeks of 3 treatments. All right. Of these 3 treatments, we scanned her. Stage 4 went to stage 0, and she never had chemotherapy. Now, chemotherapy can be helpful too with immunotherapy, but this was where I saw firsthand, close up in my own family, the ability to harness your body's own health defenses in a way that I couldn't do for my uncle 15 years ago before, and we lost him. And we were to save my mom. And I can tell you, I literally had dinner with my mom 2 days ago, and she's 90, 91, 10, 11 years later, completely healthy, completely cancer-free. And by the way, this immunotherapy, if we could only get this to work as well for everyone, this is where we are in the history of medicine. We can see an end. We know how we can get to it. And we've actually seen successes. We just can't get it to work for everyone yet. And there are different ways to actually wake up your immune system. Another way that I'm working on now that a colleague of mine in Germany is working on is also absolutely jaw-droppingly amazing. Imagine this. Somebody has cancer, and they're gonna get a biopsy no matter what. They're gonna take some tissue out to look at it under the microscope. What kind of cancer is it? Is it a brain? Is it breast? Is it colon? Is it pancreas? Where is it coming from? You're going to get a diagnosis. Right now, up until recently, that's all we did with the tissue, the biopsy. You just got a result, and it's kind of like a death sentence depending on what type of cancer. And you're supposed to then go to the guidelines and open up the treatment book to say, well, what's the pathway what's the recipe we should follow for treatment? Too often, those recipes don't work very well or for very long. And what if I told you that where we are headed with cancer therapy is a new frontier where you take the tumor with the biopsy, sure, look at it under the microscope, call it out, define what it is, and then you send it to a lab where you do complete full-on genetics. You sequence the entire cancer genome. All right. Right now we do sequence. We take a dozen. Dozen, 3 dozen. I'm talking about doing 20, 30,000 genes, right? Right now, most people say it's not worth it. We don't know what we do with all that information. What if I told you if you took a tumor and sequenced all the genes, you find every mutation, every typographical error that we talked about earlier that's in that cancer? Those are the smoking guns of the cancer. Now, what if I took a piece of a little normal blood, normal cells, and sequenced that too? All right. Now, people are hearing me talk who are oncologists or scientists would say, I don't know what you're talking about. That's like double the waste of effort because now you're going to sequence the human genome twice in a single patient. And what are you going to do with all that information? This is where technology sits in. Artificial intelligence, machine learning. Let's now have a computer compare normal cells with tumor cells, back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, subtract out all the mutations that are found in normal cells, leaving only the smoking gun mutations in the cancer. A couple hundred are going to be left. Those are the smoking guns. Those are the doers that led to this cancer. Now imagine, and I'm going to give you an analogy here. Do you remember that Tom Cruise movie, Minority Report?
Yeah.
So you remember like he was wearing these gloves and you have a glass pane and you can actually move the things around on the glass with your fingertips, right? So now imagine you can take these human, the cancer mutations on the bottom of this glass screen and you can just randomly with your fingers pick out 20 random mutations and move them up on the screen. All right, now you've just picked out the mutations and now you can connect the mutations together. I call it a pearl necklace. Imagine every mutation's a pearl and you connect them together with the string that connects the pearl necklace. Now you get what I'm saying? Like now we've taken the tumor, find out the doers, the smoking guns. Now we've strung them together. Okay. This is the most wanted sign that you would actually place out for the criminal. And now imagine you hit print technology. And now you have a protein printer that prints out those smoking guns as a protein full of your own individual cancer of that particular person. Now you take that protein and you inject it under the skin, and you're challenging your own immune system. You're vaccinating yourself with your own cancer, and you're causing your own immune system to say, aha, this is a bad guy. We're going to develop antibodies to go find our immune system. We're going to get ratcheted up to go find that cancer. Well, this is happening right now in clinical trials. I have a colleague named Saskia Biskup that is actually developing peptide vaccine treatments against cancer. And if you want to see some amazing results, there was a paper we published in Nature Communications about a year ago that showed in more than 100 people with glioblastoma, that is a game over brain cancer. Nobody lives more than a couple of years with this, all right? That with this treatment, we've been able to actually show that some patients with their own immune system woken up can actually keep them alive and cancer-free. Brain cancer, like that is no-win situation, impossible to possible. And actually somebody who I've just recruited as an ambassador to my nonprofit organization, the Angiogenesis Foundation, I strongly encourage people who want to have a modicum of hope, who wants to see what I'm talking about in real life on social media. There's a woman named Rebecca Devine. She's okay with me giving her name. Her handle is That Brainy Blonde. It's a triple entendre. She's blonde, she's very smart, but she had a glioblastoma 7 years ago, and she is thriving, alive with this immunotherapy. So between my mother, Rebecca Devine, I'm just telling you, like I've known well over a dozen people who there's no way they'd be here today if it wasn't for the scientific advances that all shore up the body's health defense systems, specifically the immune system. But the drugs alone aren't enough. You really can take advantage at home of your own diet and lifestyle to be able to tip those odds in your favor.
I've heard you say that immunotherapy is more likely to be successful if you have certain bacteria in your gut.
Yeah,
What is that?
Okay. So in 2017, I helped to convene a cancer research conference in Paris, and we called it Rethinking Cancer. And we brought the world's best minds out there. And one of the researchers named Dr. Laurence Zitvogel, she's in Paris, works in Paris at the Institut Gustave Roussy. She is an immuno-oncologist, so she studies immunotherapy for cancer. And at the time, we asked her to present some groundbreaking results that were embargoed at the time. So our conference was the first time it was ever presented. And she said in 100 people who were receiving immunotherapy for different types of cancer, that if you looked at the difference between people who responded, did well, versus people who didn't respond, didn't do well, died. All right. And that's the frustration with the types of treatments my mom had. Some people do well, some people don't do well. We pull our hair out trying to figure out like, what's going on? How do we make people do better? Well, it turns out that when you compare everything, gender, age, comorbidities, all the other genetic factors, the research that was presented showed that there was no differences between the groups of responders, people who did well versus people who didn't do well for immunotherapy, except for one thing. That one thing was one bacteria. The responders had one bacteria called Akkermansia muciniphila. So most bacteria have a genus and species, first name, last name. First name is Akkermansia, last name is muciniphila. Okay, it likes to grow in mucus, muciniphila. Where is there a lot of mucus? In the colon. Where's the colon? That's on this model, the blue area. So Akkermansia grows right here in the cecum, which is the pouch in the colon right at the beginning before you take the up elevator to the top of the colon. That's where it grows. If the people had that Akkermansia, they would respond to immunotherapy. So what the researcher did, she took out the Akkermansia and brought it to her lab of the responders from humans and gave it to mice who were not responding to immunotherapy. Boom. She'd resurrect the immune response to kill the cancer. So this is one of the first bacteria, and there may be many, many that we haven't yet discovered. All right. So like my whole career has all been about discovery. There may be more bacteria, but we discovered at least one, the presence of which seems to be absolutely vital. If you are a patient receiving immunotherapy, the type of immunotherapy called checkpoint inhibitors, if you want to tip the odds in your own favor of being a responder. Now, how do you get Akkermansia? Well, at the time, there was no Akkermansia probiotics. Now you can actually find Akkermansia probiotics. But at the time this was coming out, you had to grow your own Akkermansia, DIY Akkermansia. All right. So how do you grow it? Well, it turns out that there are certain foods you can eat that grow Akkermansia. What are those foods? Pomegranate juice, pomegranate seeds will grow Akkermansia. Cranberries, cranberry juice, dried cranberries will grow Akkermansia. Concord grape juice or Concord grapes will grow Akkermansia. Chili peppers will actually grow Akkermansia. Chinese black vinegar. You ever go to dim sum and have soup dumplings?
Oh yeah.
The black vinegar sauce that they use for as a condiment to the soup dumplings? Chinese black vinegar. That will prompt your body to grow Akkermansia as well.
So what is your diet of preference then? There's so many different diets that people speak about when they talk about cancer and other chronic diseases. As I think I said to you beforehand, I'm on an extremely low carb diet, which is like verges on keto, but I kind of bounce in and out of ketosis. What do you think of, let's start with the ketogenic diet. Do you have a view on that kind of diet?
Yeah. So let me just give you my perspective on diets. Lots of different diets out there. They're all designed with kind of a specific perspective and a particular goal in mind. Oftentimes, diet, whether you're talking about South Beach or keto or carnivore or vegan, they're all designed. Achieve a certain kind of goal. Most of them are very, very difficult to maintain for a long period of time. Now, people are vegans and vegetarians, and that's something that, because of the diversity of the food that you can actually maintain that. But if you're only doing pure keto, that's very difficult to do. So most popular trending diets are short-lived, short-term solutions, and they'll kind of force your body to do something. All right. But you can't keep it up. And so a diet that you can't keep up isn't, to me, a very practical diet, because you're going to bursts of activity that you just can't do your whole life. I find that it's much more healthy in the long run if you can find a sustainable way of eating that works for you personally, that you can maintain, and that you're going to enjoy your life as well. Most people who are on really strict diets, they're not enjoying their diet. You know, like people who only eat meat, only eat carnivore diet, or only eat raw food. Listen, you can't. Don't con me. You can't be enjoying eating raw food, you know, your entire life. You know, navigating through society and seeing other people, you know, eat a big steaming plate of pasta or something, you know, or going to a Chinese restaurant. So what I'm saying is that trending diets are well intentioned. They often are designed to do one thing, but you can't keep it up. So it doesn't really, at the end of the day, contribute to the ultimate goal. What I prefer and where I think the science takes us, where the next frontier for like lifetime health is tearing a page from the playbook of some of the healthiest cuisines in the world. And I would say Mediterranean is the hotbed, the crucible of a lot of healthy diets. Not just the blue zones, I think, but there are blue zones in the Mediterranean. Also Asia. There's a blue zone in Asia as well. But, you know, look, there's also a blue zone in Latin America. If you take a look at the common denominator of what's going on in the Mediterranean and Asia, is a very healthy, plant-forward, fresh, seasonal, healthy cooking oils, healthy preparation style, absolutely delicious way of eating. I mean, come on. If I were to take you to a Mediterranean restaurant or to a Asian restaurant, I would find it hard to believe that you and I opening the menu couldn't find something that we would enjoy eating, right? Mm-hmm. So Mediterranean is how I tell people I actually eat. That's my quote diet.
Why do the Japanese seem to do so well when we think about the world's healthiest countries? Looking at some data here, a variety of different graphs that I have in front of me, and Japan seems to continually come out on top as it relates to health span.
Yeah. Okay. Well, there's no one single factor I think that was responsible for it, but it is true. The Japanese demographics show consistently some of the oldest, longest living people. You know, they tend, first and foremost, okay, before we talk about what they eat, let me tell you what they don't do. They don't overeat. And I'm giving a purposeful pause there because overeating, caloric loading, okay, is very damaging to our metabolism. It actually counters our ability to live long. It actually speeds up our cellular aging. It sets up inflammation. So by cutting down on your caloric intake every day, that's one of the things is that the Japanese culture, the culinary and gastronomic approach to food in Japan tends to favor modesty, undereating rather than overeating.
I've got a question here. Yeah. How do I know if I'm overeating? Okay,
so there's a Confucian saying that's been translated into the Japanese that's a mantra, which is hara hachi ban mi, which means stop eating when you're 80% full.
I asked this question because I have a friend who was, I think it was on this podcast, so I don't think I'm revealing anything. He actually sat next to me when Peter Attia was talking to him. He's Jack, who runs production for us. He had his DEXA scan done, which looks at your visceral fat, subcutaneous fat, muscle mass, bone density, those kinds of things.
Yeah.
And he's a slim guy. He's much slimmer than I am. And the diagnosis that came back from the doctor basically said, you're overnourished. And when I look at him, he doesn't look like someone that's overnourished. And the doctor essentially said to him that you need to reduce your calories. Now I'm looking at this guy thinking this is a slim guy. This guy's like much, much slimmer than I am. Yet the doctor's telling him that he's overeating.
Yeah, so I wrote a whole book on this called Eat to Beat Your Diet, which is not a diet book. It's an anti-diet book that really uncloaks the new science of your metabolism. And what I try to say in terms of sharing that science is that, first of all, body fat, which societally is regarded as a bad thing. Nobody wants fat, right? Is actually a good thing. Body fat's an organ in the body. Did you know that? Like it's one of our body organs, our body fat. It is distributed throughout our body. And what does it do as an organ? Well, it's got some cushioning effect. So, you know, like if you didn't have any body fat, by the way, you tripped on the stairs and you hit the ground, you might rupture your organs. All right. So it has a little bit of a cushion effect, marshmallowy cushion effect. But our fat also is a fuel tank to store fuel. So when we're eating calories, our calories are our energy. We're eating food, we're eating calories. That's our energy. That's a fuel our body runs off of. I always tell people, if you have a car and you're filling it up with gasoline at the petrol station or the gas station, you don't even think about your gas until your fuel gauge starts to run low. And the same thing for our bodies is that we don't think about our fuel until we're hungry. And our hunger in our brain and our gut is really as our fuel tank that signals, oh, we're getting towards that red line, better go fill up. Now, unlike a gas station or petrol station, there's no clicker on our body. We can keep stuffing food into our system. We can very easily overload our fuel tank. Okay, that is, you've got to cut back on your calories. That's what your friend heard when the doctor was saying you got to cut back on your calories because you're overloading on fuel. So where does the fat build up? There's different areas that fat in your body builds up. Now, the fat there's white fat and there's brown fat. White fat can be under your chin, could be under your arms, could be in your thighs and your butt, could be the muffin top, around your waist. But that's not where the most dangerous fat builds up. The most dangerous fat, inflammatory fat, is a fat that builds up inside the tube of your body. So if you think of your body like a poster tube, okay, inside that tube, all this gut is, the body cavity, if you were to slice this body in half and look at a cross section, all right, it's a tube. You can fill any of these interstitial areas between organs, you can pack with fat. So think about, you're going to FedEx something to somebody, overnight mail, a vase or a glass or bottle of wine or whatever, you're going to pack it full of peanuts and you're going to put it into a package. Well, look, you can get a big box and put a lot more peanuts on, or you can take a skinny box that will just fit it and you'll put it in. So it doesn't really matter the size of your tube. You could be a skinny person and you could pack it with a lot of peanuts, in this case, visceral fat. And that's what you're talking about in a skinny person with too much visceral fat, too many peanuts packed in there. And that is a result of overconsumption of calories, that fat, that energy, the fuel tanks building up within a skinny body.
Yeah.
And that's what we call skinny fat.
I am still mildly in shock about it because I saw his results, I panicked. So the next day I also went to the same clinic as him. I had my DEXA scan done and it came back and said that I had, quote, 0 visceral fat. So my results from Dr. Peter Attia said I had 0 visceral fat, which he said was rare. But I had subcutaneous fat, which is the fat on the outside, more than Jack did. So Jack had visceral fat, which is the fat inside us. And he has almost no subcutaneous fat. And I'm kind of the inverse of that. And I don't understand I was trying to figure out, why is my body, when I eat something, putting the fat subcutaneously on the outside, whereas Jack's body is putting the fat on the inside, which is the dangerous fat?
Here is an interesting thing. Let's look at the opposite of building up subcutaneous fat,
which is the external fat, not the dangerous.
The external fat, yeah. So there's two kinds of body fat: white fat and brown fat. They're all good. They're all beneficial. White fat can be subcutaneous. Subcutaneous means under the skin, under your jaw, under the skin of your jaw, under your arms, on your thighs. That's subcutaneous. White fat can also be visceral fat. That's deep inside the tube of your body. And then brown fat is not wiggly jiggly like white fat. Brown fat is wafer thin, and it's plastered around our neck. It's behind our breastbone, a little bit between our shoulder blades, a little bit in our belly. And brown fat actually is metabolically active, and it fires up a process called thermogenesis to burn down harmful visceral extra body fat. So you can use good fat to burn down bad fat, which is the amazing thing. Again, fat is not universally bad. It's actually quite good. And so one of the things that I think is really important to know is that when you've got too much visceral fat, you've got too much inflammation, but you can actually use your brown fat to try to control that, to try to burn it down. Brown fat, by the way, is activated by foods and activated by cold temperatures. So when you talk about your cold plunge, brown fat can actually light up. So you just handed me a card. I'll describe this, in which there's two pictures of a figure. And one of the picture on the left is room temperature, and it's not cold, it's regular room temperature. And this is the same individual, by the way. And you can't see anything lighting up because the brown fat is just adjusted to normal room temperature. Now, on the right-hand side is when you actually lower the temperature.
In an ice bath or something?
No, this is actually just lowering the room temperature
Oh,
really, really
really?
cold,
Okay.
like a laboratory condition, lowering the room temperature, and boom, you see all this brown fat lighting up. Remember, I told you it's plastered around the neck, behind the breastbone, a little bit in your belly, and this is Mother Nature's adaptation in evolution to help animals survive cold temperatures. So before we had thermostats and room heaters, think about by the way, brown fat was discovered in hibernating animals. There was a zoologist who was looking at, plucked out a kind of a muskrat looking animal from hibernation and